Hey folks, Lana here. I'm coming at you with another podcast-inspired chat. I was listening to the We Can Do Hard Things podcast, where Abby and Glennon were interviewing. Oh my God, I had their name. Prentice Hempel, something like that. Anyway, it's episode 319, and they talk a lot about embodiment and being the person in your lineage to stop the passing on of generational trauma. And they talked about a lot of things, and I had a thought because I was listening to it on my drive home, and I was like, oh, this totally relates to what I was talking about in my previous video, sharing just sort of my takeaways from the Myth of Normal Gabor Mate book, and I totally lost it. But there's another point that resonated that I wanted to share, and let me just see if I can set y'all up a little bit better. Really brief. That's going to be a total lie. It is every time. But, so in the podcast they talk about embodiment, and basically like oftentimes we are reliving the feelings of our childhood where we didn't have agency to control a situation, to maybe even just feel our feelings over a situation. And often in adulthood, when we haven't processed trauma, our body like physically remembers that pain and those feelings, and we sort of internalize. I really liked how they talk about it, but internalize like the shoulds of like, you know, this is making me feel uncomfortable, but I'm just going to push this down because I want to go along to get along, or whatever it is. But it's often a, you should be fine with this, so like just deal with it. And so embodiment is, one, having the awareness enough to like recognize when those feelings happen in your body, and then to make that active choice of, okay, like, I mean, it's often self-soothing first, right? Like the recognition, and then the like, okay, like little Lana, I am here, and like, I recognize you're feeling these uncomfortable feelings, and that's totally valid. You went through XYZ, but you know, you're safe now. Like, I've got you. Like, adult me has got you. And we're going to make a choice to, like, do we need to remove ourselves from this situation? Do we need to take a deep breath? Do we need to assert ourselves and our needs more in this conversation, or whatever it is? But being embodied is allowing ourselves to move from reactivity, so reacting to the trauma that we are like reliving, to choice, to embodied, conscious, intentional choice that honors our authentic self and needs and desires and all these things. And I just thought that was a really beautiful way of putting it, and I liked how they talked about how it's a constant practice, that it's, you know, you're working on this a lifetime, and that a great way to start with this work is to look back not just on your childhood, but also your parents' childhood and who their parents were and all the things that they went through, to understand the history of trauma in your family. One, it gives us more compassion for our parents, that they're just humans that are flawed and broken and hurting, who, you know, often unknowingly passed on their pain to us. And then, yeah, like you can just recognize patterns, I think, as well. And then, again, make more of an active choice of, this ends with me, or maybe it doesn't end with us, because that's something else I talked about on the podcast, that you're not going to be able to fix it all, you know, that there's still going to be work to be done when you pass, but that's for the next generation. As much as we want to just like have a solution and be the savior, that's not the case. That's a little bit wishful thinking, delusional. Yeah. Oh, and there's another thing they talked about, which was like, yeah, just that this process of healing generational trauma again, like, it takes a long time, and there's a lot of grieving of what happened to you, grieving what happened to your family members, grieving that you're the one that's like taking on this burden of doing the work. And that, yeah, like, the understanding of what happened to you, what happened to people in your family is one thing, and you kind of have to go through the feelings and the grieving to get to the solution, which is just like a lifetime of practice of embodiment. But that's often not what we want, because we want to avoid the discomfort. And that really resonated with me too, where I was like, shit, they're telling me that I can't go from A to C, that there's all this B section of, feeling the feelings and being uncomfortable, and it may not feel always so productive to sit in that, but you're not sitting in it forever, and often it's like waves of going through that, working through those feelings. I'm trying to think. There was something else. I also liked how they talked about, and this is, I think, maybe I'm remembering my point, but where it connected back to Gabor Mate's book, and how they talked about trauma being almost like built into our societal structures, in that it creates environments of trauma, say through sexism and racism and classism and all of the isms, and that a lot of those isms also prevent us from, like, put up barriers for healing from that trauma, right? Like, if we are working 3 jobs, and we are constantly stressed out, and we are in a state of basically like fight or flight and like survival mode, where we're not going to have the luxury to take a minute and reflect or take a breath, like, and then also just like our world of social media, like, we're constantly reacting to things, and it builds the muscle of reactivity, when a lot of times the most powerful place that we can take action from is from a relaxed, mindful, and present state. Because all of the options, all of the choices are available to us when we are in a relaxed state. But when we are stressed out and reactive, it's often, what is most muscle memory, and sometimes that's like a bad habit, or like, what's the quote-unquote easiest thing for us to do? Maybe it's avoiding conflict when we needed to speak up, whatever it may be. But I just thought that was really, really interesting, and it kind of connected back to what Gabor Mate talks about in his book, in that, it's cool, like, we could look at mental health and wellness on an individual level, but it would not be a complete view if we don't acknowledge the systems that cause so much pain in us. And again, and that ties back into how, as much as we would like to individually be the heroes of our, like, lineage and solve all the issues of our family, we do not exist in isolation. We are a part of a network, a structure, a community, whether we like it or not, and so we can't do it alone. And do I have the answers as to how to do it together necessarily? No. I think a lot of it is maybe just role modeling. Be the change you wish to see in the world. I don't know, role modeling behavior you want to see, having honest conversations, and just being as aligned with your, like, living as much in alignment with your values as possible, and I guess having the strength to have difficult conversations when misalignment comes up. But maybe that's a whole other video, and it sounds like there's going to be a follow-up episode where they talk about the person who I've already forgotten their name and their book. You can find their name and their information on the podcast episode description. I'll have the number in the description below of this video, but they have written a book, and there's some tenets, I guess, of how to go about practicing embodiment, and I think there's some like exercises and stuff, and it sounds like they're going to work through one of those practices in a future podcast episode on the We Can Do Hard Things podcast. So I'm staying tuned for that. If you're interested in what I shared today from my takeaways, you might want to tune in for that too. So yeah, coming at you, sweaty post, what was that? Oh, like I was going down a roller coaster. Woohoo! Yeah, post sweaty rollerblade is another disgusting day today. And I'm going to go plant some more lemongrass because I'm trying to keep away my mosquitoes. And yeah, eat my salad because I was preparing it. I was listening to this podcast episode and finishing it up. Now you know my evening plans. But yes, I will see you all in the next one. I hope you enjoyed my takeaways from the podcast as much as I enjoyed listening to it. I'm really glad that I tuned in. It had been a while since I'd listened to one of the We Can Do Hard Things podcast episodes, and it was just what I needed today. It was really good. All right, see you guys in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.